welcome to the live stream. Let me know if you can see and hear me properly and that folks are here and around and that everything is working. This music is too upbeat for the topic. Yeah, I guess the intro music is kind of a little intense for the topic. Good evening, everyone. Hello from Vegas. All right. Great to see you all. Hopefully you can all hear me and that you're not all just, someone let me know that I'm actually live. Yes, so today's topic, as you might have seen, is that, okay, good. You can see and hear me. All right, we are going to do a just good old-fashioned live stream about the debt ceiling. So last week I did a debt ceiling live stream, so we're pretty much going to be repeating what I said last week. However, I have not overdosed on cold brew the way I had last week. Also, I wore the cat ears because I was like, you know what's ridiculous? Members of the U.S. government thinking about defaulting on U.S. debt. So I will also be ridiculous. The donut I'm pretty excited about, and we might just like eat it kind of early because it's pretty good. Oh, it's that the overhead camera is off. Okay, hold on. This happens. This one just loves to turn itself on and off all the time. Could check that before I started. There we go. Also, it's in a weird spot. All right, there we go. Here is the donut, which is the berry tahini donut. So it's got if you're not in the US, you probably have not heard of tahini spice. I think it's originally Mexican, but is made mostly for the US market. It's a spicy, but a little sweet spice mix. And then it's a berry donut. So I don't know. I think it's going to be good. I'm just hungry. So I'll probably rate it higher. I have noticed that if I'm hungry when I'm reviewing the donuts, they do get a higher rating. So overhead camera activated, yes. I finally made it. I can see you and your outfit is fabulous. Thank you. Berry tahini. So I think it's gonna be good. And it's also a little weird, just like the debt ceiling. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how many of you all were here last week. I see quite a few people that I know were here last week. And I don't know if I have anything to add to the debt ceiling conversation from what I said last week, but it's kind of I can't talk about anything else. If you want me to talk about financial or economics topics, even if no new news is happening, we are getting closer and closer to June 1st. Which June 1st is the X date, meaning the date that the Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has said, hey, I think we're going to run out of money to pay our bills. So once again, to recap where we are at with the debt ceiling in the U.S., for folks that haven't been paying attention, because I understand it's not the top of the mind for everybody. So where we're at. Back in January, we hit the arbitrary limit, also known as the debt ceiling, that Congress sets, which authorizes us to borrow debt. In the U.S., we spend more money than we bring in tax revenue on various things. Military, Social Security, government pension, government worker pensions, Medicare, Medicaid. I'm struggling to think of things the government spends money on, but we spend money on a lot of things. Things that governments spend money on. And particularly in the United States, that is the military. So we spend lots of money on things. We get in money in tax revenue. Tax revenue is not a perfect calculation as far as how much we have going out. When you get to the billions and trillions of dollars of scale of bills, it's hard to know what all is coming in and going out exactly to the number. So the best estimate in January that Treasury Secretary Yellen said is hey, if we borrow money from like other funds that I'm allowed to borrow, which is called extraordinary measures, so went into little different government coffers to like find enough money to pay bills without borrowing more money to pay bills, which is what we expected to do. Uh, Originally, she estimated that we would run out in August. So she was like, get your shit together, Congress and the president, and vote on this damn debt ceiling. So before August, but preferably do it faster. Turns out we didn't gather as much in taxes as predicted for all sorts of reasons. And the current estimate is that, and like, Treasury's out here like trying to claw back money that they've already given to states and cities as part of like the Inflation Reduction Act and like all sorts of things. She went like straight up and was like, guys, I think that this is June 1st. I think our X date is June 1st now. And she said that, I don't know, maybe like 6 weeks ago. I don't have the exact date on that, but it was a while ago. And meanwhile, it seems like we're no freaking closer to a deal. Just to be clear, there is no necessity to make a deal. All they have to do is vote to raise the debt ceiling. However, this is politics, so they are not going to do it, even though, you know, prior to 2011, they would just do it because that's part of their job. But now, ever since 2011, they have figured out that there is this is a good way to, when you are not in power, this is a good thing to argue about with whoever is in power, because the catastrophic effects of not raising the debt ceiling are so big that it's a very good negotiating tactic. If you say, you, in this case, being congressional Republicans, say, actually, we need some things if you want us to vote on raising debt ceiling. And so essentially, the current congressional Republicans are having lots of meetings about the things that they want, and Democrats are like, yeah, but don't you also like not want all of the financial markets in the world to collapse? Do you also like not want people to get their Social Security and disability checks? Do you not want members of the military who are armed to not get paid next month? Because that hasn't gone very well for countries before that failed to pay their military, especially when they have the largest standing military in the world. So essentially they're using this as a negotiating tactic, even though it's in everyone's best interest. And when I say everyone, I don't just mean the United States. I mean like the whole freaking world. This would be the only sovereign debt default in modern history. We haven't seen the likes of this in bazillion years. The last time we really saw a lot of issues go down with sovereign debt at this scale was the Weimar Republic, interwar Germany between World War I and World War II. And that resulted in, well, it was complicated, but essentially to pay back all of the money that they owed for all of the war reparations that the Weimar Republic had to pay, like, throughout Europe, they printed a bunch of money, and they printed so much money that they went into hyperinflation, which is one of the many reasons that Germany is now terrified of inflation. And Germany, being the largest economy in Europe, has a hold on the gonads of Europe's currency, and they loosened up a lot during COVID because all governments had to finance stuff during COVID because there was a compelling need for state spending because of a giant global virus that we needed to spend money on developing vaccines and protections and distributing things and all sorts of, keeping people from dying. Governments had to do what governments have to do in that case. We started here, and I'm like, I've looped back around to here, and I'm somehow to COVID. So we're going to focus back. But this is where we're at. We're a week and a change out from the X date, which is the date that we will have no more money. The Treasury is not set up to prioritize the order in which it pays things back. It pays bills when the bills come in. It doesn't really say like, this is my Amex bill, I should pay that one before I pay the medical bill. Like, they aren't set up for that. Additionally, the Treasury is both the combination of the Treasury and the Federal Reserve are so freaked out right now that they don't want to hint to any Congress members that they are working on any solutions to like prioritize who we pay off so that they can like stave off debt any longer. Essentially, they don't want to talk about what other options they might have because they don't want Congress to see that as an out. They want Congress and the president, who is involved in these because this is a real big deal, they want them to like get it together. And so Yellen doesn't want to even hint that they're working on anything. So one option that they do have, though, is they would pay U.S. bondholders ahead of everyone else, which essentially would mean that we wouldn't default as early. So if they can figure out how to like actually do it, like the physical actual doing of it, because it's like a ledger. The shit gets paid. Like they're not busy looking at being like, oh, this is some bonds. These aren't some bonds, but if they can physically figure out how to do it, there is a possibility that if they don't raise the debt ceiling, they could stave off a default by just like only paying bondholders first and then like not paying military members and Social Security recipients, and which is bad, is very bad. Like people not getting their disability checks and their Social Security checks is like a problem. Not paying our military, as I hinted, real issue. Potentially very dangerous issue. Usually you want to pay the people that have the nuke codes. Just like as a general rule. And yes, you might say they have a lot of loyalty and that they won't try to like do anything bad. But also, how long does your loyalty extend when your government seemingly cannot pay you anymore, right? So, they're like gonna claw things back, blah, 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 blah. So yeah. I'm in Virginia. I've never heard of Tajín. Oh yeah, let's talk about Tajín. That's like way more fun. Okay. So I'll show you a picture of it and then you might be like, oh, I know what this is. I have a feeling you're gonna like be like, oh yeah. This is very important. You're gonna see this and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I've seen this in restaurants. Where is my Apple TV? Okay, this is Tajín. You've probably seen this before. It's like a cilantro lime seasoning. Chili peppers, sea salt, citric acid, dehydrated lime juice, silicon dioxide. There we go. You've probably seen it before. Yes, essentially Janet Yellen did play whack-a-mole with her YNAB. Know Your Joe says they will pass it as soon as they get all their back-end deal settled. I mean, that's what the markets seem to be expecting right now. Like, if people didn't believe that they were going to get it worked out, then, like, the markets would be in way bigger chaos than they are right now. We are seeing a difference in U.S. Treasury bonds. The U.S. Treasury bonds that are due in June, which is the sooner date, and the ones that are due in August are trading at a differential right now in interest rates. So the ones due in June are having a higher interest rate, and that's because they're perceived to have a higher risk than the ones out in June. And so that's definitely like a concern, but that it's a mild. It's 5.5% to 5%. So it's only a 0.5% differential, which is, I mean, that's not insignificant in the world of interest rates by 2 months. But that kind of tells you we're not seeing the markets respond as well because, like, they've threatened this crap before and they've worked it out, but we've never gone so dark into the hole as we currently are. What kind of deal? So yes, it would be between the Democratic reps and the Republican reps. The Democrats are like they don't want to like bend to these Republican demands. One of the sticking points that's going on right now is Republican demands that they implement like work requirements for things like Medicaid. And SNAP benefits, food stamp benefits, and some of the like TANF and things like that. So there is essentially, they're holding welfare over the heads of the Dems who obviously don't want to implement like these burdensome work requirements, which also just like don't tend to pencil out terribly well because they require like a lot more administrative work to like make sure people are submitting enough resumes every week in order to like get food to feed their kids. Sorry, getting off track here. To be able to get medical care, Medicaid is low income health care, which is not even available in every state. So that's the current sticking point. And you know, Dems don't want to acquiesce, but like nobody is pretending this isn't important right now. Like Biden flew back early from the G7 summit to fix this. And it was like a big bummer because he had important meetings and essentially had to be like, I have to nope out because it's possible that my country's going to take down the entire world's financial markets. And I need to like go babysit Congress. So yeah. Tugboat had an interesting question, which was, can they claw back some of the SVB money? No, because it's like a different pocket. So there's two things here. The Treasury is like who prints money, who who pays our bills. And then the Federal Reserve is actually like the Federal Reserve is in charge of the banking systems in the country. And so the Federal Reserve, in this case, uses currently like the Treasury bonds and uses them as collateral for overnight lending between banks because banks lend from one another. So the SVB money came from within an insurance fund in the Federal Reserve. That money is not the Fed's money. I know this is really like complicated. One of the things that like we're concerned about right now is, so in 2008, if people remember TARP, which was the big bank bailouts, but it was, what does it actually stand for? I can't even remember what TARP stood for anymore. Troubled Asset Relief Program. So in 2008, in the fall of 2008, if I recall correctly, Congress was like not passing TARP. And they weren't bailing out the big banks. And everybody was like, but you got to bail out the banks for the, security of the financial system. We all remember it, right? As long as you were, I guess, old enough to be paying attention to this. But failing to do that caused a lot of chaos in the financial markets, and essentially continuing to fail to like lift the debt ceiling appropriately is likely to have the same effect. And this is really important when it comes to the security of U.S. Treasury debt. Our bonds are used around the world as collateral for short-term lending. They are used by governments in order to secure their own debt. Like, they are considered a very safe asset, and they are held by every corporation, every country holds these U.S. Treasury bonds. And so if we're looking at not making them worth that, even if we do default and this doesn't get saved, that trust is broken. And that potential chaos that causes in the financial system as banks start to go, maybe we stop using U.S. Treasury debt, could have really serious consequences in the U.S. economy as other economies, as corporations look for other avenues for that. Gerald says, we need to put term limits on Congress. Some of my reps in Washington state have been in there for over 30 years. It doesn't matter if there are Democrats or Republicans, no more than 2 terms. Man, okay, the only thing I would say about 2 terms is I feel like 2 terms is really short. It's not so bad for senators because their terms are longer, but like, I don't know. That 2 terms feels very short because of how long it takes to like get onto committees and like actually build the relationships in order. Like if you look at like effective Congress members, they tend to be effective at like doing bipartisan legislation and actually moving things forward after they've been there a bit longer. Like we can't all be, AOC. So most people when they're freshman or sophomore, like congressional members do not have the relationships in Washington. They don't have like the power and influence in order to like get things moving. And I would say that 2 terms I think is too limited, but also I would say that like 30 years is maybe too long. I mean, look at what's going on right now with Dianne Feinstein. It's like a little scary. So yeah. But I do think that term limits are worth discussing, but like this is not being caused by term limits right now. I mean, other problems I think are being caused by like lack of term limits right now. Feinstein, for example. But like the problems right now are being caused by the government failing to like agree to doing basic stuff that is their job. We do not have tahini in Canada, at least not in Quebec. I am sad. It looks yummy. It is pretty good. I'm really interested. Maybe we'll have to do the donut early, you all. It is a tit for tat kind of thing. Yes. The terms could be shortened and limits applied if the system were streamlined and made more efficient. I think that's possible. I think that there are very few people that wouldn't agree that some sort of streamlining needs to happen in Congress. Like their ability to just like not do their jobs is a little ridiculous. I'm in Oregon, which currently can't get anything done in our Congress, which isn't even a full-time legislature. We're a part-time legislature, and the Republicans who are in the minority in Oregon have walked out again, and like a ton of them are not eligible to run again because they're walked out so that we don't meet quorum because you have to have 2/3 to like pass anything. So their like tactic is they just like run away to Idaho. So yeah, we like can't get anything done. I just did a story that aired yesterday on copay accumulators, and it was entirely about the fact that it was about copay accumulators, but like the end result is that this thing has died in committee 3 times because they can't get it out of committee because the Republicans have figured out that they could just like not show up to work. And so instead of like lowering the quorum, what they did instead is if you miss more than 10 unexcused days during the term, then you're not eligible to run again. And so now we're reaching the point where like almost all the Republicans are like not eligible because they've been walking out in Oregon because we've reached over 10 days. Gerald says, did you not watch the TikTok hearings? It tells you Congress is out of touch. I actually did not watch the TikTok hearings. I did hear coverage of them at work. But I'm not going to say that Congress is out of touch. I'm just not positive that term limits are the only solution. I'm not going to say that term limits are a bad idea. I think term limits with the current terms that we have and the current Congress that we have would not fix a problem like we are currently seeing. I think it has to be part of a overall reform. But we need to have an America, and like we're on fast track to like not have an America if they do not raise the debt ceiling, because we are going to like default on our debt. The largest economy in the world is going to default on its debt. That is a big, very big problem, which is why, once again, I couldn't even do like watch me fill in my planner live stream, because it's just like, this is all we need to be concerned about. I mean, we also need to be concerned about the student loan pause is going to come back real soon. Essentially, it sounds like they're not going to have any like debt. They're not going to figure it out before the end of June, which means that payments are going to come back in August. So yeah. Poof. Is this a strictly Republican thing, or did the Dems do the same thing when Trump was in power? No, and guess what? The Republicans didn't do this when Trump was in power either. And you know what was very interesting about that? Is that Trump was just straight up use the 14th Amendment. So, let me actually read the 14th Amendment for you. So, the 14th Amendment essentially says that the debt of the U.S. government cannot be tested, and I am, hold on. Now I'm questioning if the 14th was the right one. Y'all, because I know it's it's dual process under the law, and it's like the Equal Rights Amendment, but hold on. Anyway, Trump was just straight up like, it is in the 14th Amendment. Okay, the validity in the 14th Amendment, which is part of the Rights Bill, the validity of the public debt of the United States authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, should not be questioned. I'm not a lawyer. I can't afford law school. But this is what people are saying that Biden should just invoke. There's also, I've talked before on some like ages ago live streams, there's like a possibility that the Treasury is just gonna like mint a like $1 trillion coin. With the idea that they do have the power to mint coins. And so like maybe they could just do that. So yeah. I believe that most of the politicians are out of touch. That was a bipartisan statement. It's not just it appears to be. It is absolutely a power play for negotiating. It is very frustrating because this power play, the scale of what they're trying to get out of this relative to the seriousness of not raising the debt ceiling is very scary. Yes, tugboat. This is like a game of chicken with a black hole. Correct. Like, this is terrifying. Gosh, I feel like it's already time to eat the donut, and we've only been streaming for half an hour, but y'all, I think we need a donut because it's just too much. Okay, here's the donut. Sorry for the not very pretty background on the overhead camera. So, it is a berry tahini donut, which is like a chili lime spice. So we'll see how it is. You can really see it's nice and sparkly. It's just like a regular donut. Oh, it is all over my lips. I taste the berry. I taste the tahini. It doesn't taste like a donut, if that makes sense. Like the spice, there's so much going on with the texture on the outside. It doesn't have the same kind of fluffy greasiness that I feel like a donut normally does. It's pretty good. There's just so much going on. It's like a fiesta on my lips. Is it berries and sweet with some heat? I really don't taste the heat, but I have a very high spice tolerance. So, like, I guess there's like a little heat. to it. Technically, there is chili spice in it. But yeah, the berry is like there. I think it's raspberry. The lime is pretty good too. You're gonna need to vacuum your lap. Actually, less of it is falling on my lap because it's sticking to my lips so much. I mean, I ate that really fast. So I think that might be 4 out of 5 donuts. It's not 5 out of 5, but it was like a nice treat. It was like a little less extra than some of the other donuts, but like the tahini was a really solid flavor. It got a little bit of the berry in there to like make it nice and Oregonian. Yeah. 4 out of 5. That was pretty good. We need to send Congress and the president donuts with a message, get it done. They do make letter donuts at the place that I get these donuts from, so maybe it's time we do that. It was delicious. It was delicious. 4 out of 5. I'm gonna give it that one. It was a little less over the top than some of them. All right. Jenny says, ignorant Canadian question. Why doesn't Biden just override the Republicans? Because I don't want my economy to crash due to a bunch of crazy people in another country. Because we have checks and balances, the president can't just like do things. And, you know, we had so much gridlock going on in Washington with these various things that Obama, Trump, and Biden have all started using more and more of these executive orders, which is a thing that they can do without involving Congress. But like Congress is who is supposed to raise the debt ceiling, not the president. They are not, they're different wings of government. Like it's not, yeah. So, Biden is supposedly, you know, strong arming McCarthy right now, the Republican speaker, and like trying to get him to agree to whatever the fuck he needs to do. However, there are some legal experts who say that Biden could invoke the 14th Amendment, which is that equal protection one that I read that includes the part that says the debt of the U.S. government should not be questioned. And so there are absolutely lawyers at work right now trying to figure out if Biden can just say print more debt because it can't be questioned. And like skip this whole congressional rigmarole. So like, yes, they also are theoretically like working on a deal, but they met yesterday and they said that they were still far apart on a deal, which is just like, Lord Almighty. How are you still far apart? We hit the freaking debt ceiling in January. So, yes. I think I agree with the markets, the same as Know Your Joe, which is they will not let it crash. This is just build up to get whatever they want. I will say that even the amount of chicken that they're playing is like, it's doing damage. Like, it's doing damage to the U.S.'s reputation as the world reserve currency, to U.S. Treasury debts as debt that is secure. And it's doing damage, right? Like, if we actually default, that's going to be rapidly rising unemployment, destabilized markets, like probably a falling dollar, although there's a possibility that people still have faith that the U.S. government will like work it out and people will rush into dollars. I mean, it's like, it's so concerning. But yeah, I mean, we might be back to the, like, they ate all the pizzas at Congress overnight. I don't really want to send them donuts. I want to say, I sent you to Washington, you get paid a salary, do your jobs. But my Congress people are not the ones that are the holdup right now. So, if you're represented by one of the Republican Congress people that is causing the holdup, feel free to just let them know that you might be concerned about the future of the entire world's economy. It is just political infighting from both parties, but what is concerning is like how close we're getting. Like, we already hit it. That's what's wild. And it's like the time to fight about these entitlements is not after we've already incurred these debts. It's just very frustrating. I don't know. The same people who are constantly arguing that they want tax cuts seemingly also want a balanced budget. And, you can't you can't get a balanced budget. You have to add to the deficit if you refuse to raise taxes. I don't know. This is just like, I'm just here. I'm just reporting on what's going on. I'm not making any recommendations for how they fix it. Just fix it, because it's really scary. Oh, any questions people have? Should you be scared? Should you put money in dollars? I don't know. I think a lot of people share that sentiment, Gerald. I don't think that many people where they are on the political spectrum look at US politics and think there's a super functional system. Other things I'm following, I'm just gonna add this in to like general things I'm following. There is a court case where I guess the Florida has like banned people from China for buying houses, as well as people from like Iran, Cuba, some Venezuela, Syria, some of the other states that have maybe governments that the US government is not like. And so that's going to court. I mean, to me, it rings like the, Chinese Exclusion Acts and all sorts of like incredibly discriminatory policies that we've had in the past where you're like based on national origin, not allowing people to engage in basic functions of a country. So that's being challenged in court. I'm keeping an eye on it because I think it's pretty interesting. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't have anything to add as far as things, but I am tracking it, and I will report back if there's anything that's kind of more on the economic side of it. Is there any halfway valid reason given to not raise it? No, that absolutely not. I mean, that's in my opinion. I think not raising it is just, like it's too late for that. Like if you didn't want to spend the money, don't spend the money. But don't refuse to pay your bills that you owe. Like this is debt we've already issued. This is payments to bondholders. Like it's very. Do you feel that inflation will continue to rise? U.S. inflation is already coming down. So it's already like pausing. It's slowed down. Slow your roll. It's been effective. So what they do to fight inflation is they raise interest rates. And if I can tell you from every darn letter into my column, people feel trapped in their low mortgages and they don't want to move and buy new houses because they don't want to go up in interest rates. So people are considering interest rates. It is slowing down investment, which means that it is cooling the economy. If we cool the economy, inflation comes down. It is already slowing. We have the data on that. So do I think it will continue to rise at the rates that it has been? Absolutely not. Do I think that it's going to be kind of sticky for a while? And do I think that like inflation is likely to hang out at higher levels than we had gotten used to? I think it's likely. I do think that the Treasury is a little like the Fed, whose like main job is controlling inflation. They're a little distracted right now working with the Treasury to like make sure that we don't implode the economy and we can pay our bills come June 1st. But can you explain what raising the debt ceiling is? Lots of talk about money that has already been spent. So quite simply, the US government, any government, gets money in the form of taxes, and it spends money in the form of government services. So that is military salaries, military investments, the money that they send for Medicaid and Medicare and pensions for federal workers and Social Security disability income. All that money is money that goes out. Anything the federal government invests in, schools, bridges, those kind of things. If they only spend as much as they bring in taxes as they spend in what they promise to all of these programs and agree to as far as Social Security and income and everything, if they balance those two things, it's called a balanced budget. So if they don't and they promise to spend more than they have coming in as taxes, then they run a deficit. And usually what they do to fill in that gap is they issue U.S. Treasury debt. So U.S. Treasury debt is things that most people are invested. Like most people in the world that have investments have some portion of U.S. Treasury debt. If they don't, they probably hold some assets that then that bank or that company holds some U.S. Treasury debt. These are bonds. These are Treasury bills, depending on the length of them. And issuing debt is how almost all countries work, right? Like most countries have some kind of sovereign debt. That is what you use to fund wars, for example. That's what you use to fund investments. Depending on how good a country is at paying back that debt will have different value to other people and will have an interest rate that reflects it. U.S. Treasury debt generally has quite a low interest rate, and it has a low interest rate because we have always had the tippity top most desirable debt because we pay back our debt on time every time. So we finance these investments that we make in our economy just the same as people finance a car or a house. You can't go out and afford to buy a $500,000 house with cash that you have. You don't get paid $500,000 on the day that you want to get the house. So instead, what you do is you say, hey, you go to a bank and you say, hey, I'm a good risk. I'll pay you back, but I'm going to pay you back over 20 years or 30 years. Give me a mortgage and I will pay you a little extra on top of what you lend each month in interest and pay you in chunks and installments. The US government just the same. They do that with the treasury bonds. So they will pay you, usually semi-annual, it depends on the type of debt. They will pay back a little bit of interest with that debt, depending on how long the debt is for, like how long those bonds are for. The coupons, which is the money that you get back as interest, will be more or less depending on the risk level, right? So we issue debt every time we decide to spend money as Congress, right? Essentially, Congress are the ones that do appropriations bills, so they're the ones that decide to spend money on things. So we've already agreed to the things that we want to spend money on, and we have gone out and we've sold bonds in order to pay for that. And the bonds are held by foreign governments. They're held by you in your 401k and your pension. They're held by big corporations. They are also held by banks because banks use them to hit their reserve. They're used as collateral in the lending world, right? Because U.S. Treasury debt is considered so secure that the bonds that they have are used as collateral in lending world between banks. So if they manage to balance the budget, they don't have to issue any more debt. But if they have obligations, like the amount of military salaries they're paying out, for example, and the reason I keep bringing that up is it's the largest portion of federal government spending in the U.S. is on the military. So if they, have bills that they owe and they didn't have enough tax revenue come in that month, then the government goes out and issues more bonds. They also issue bonds for other reasons that have to do with controlling inflation, all sorts of things. But when they issue U.S. Treasury debt, that debt, the Treasury is allowed to issue it up to a certain limit, which is the debt ceiling. And the debt ceiling right now is at like 13.3 trillion or whatever. And we already hit it. We already, the Treasury had already issued that amount of debt, and Congress had to go back and vote on it. And we didn't used to have this. We didn't get it until World War I, when we were out fighting a war, because it used to be that every single individual bond we issued, Congress had to sign off on. That's very impractical when you're fighting in a big, expensive war, because wars cost a lot of money and the government needs to go out and finance a bunch of, bombs and missiles and all the things that go into tanks, planes, all the things that go into fighting a war. And so instead, what they did, instead of saying every time Congress is going to vote on every single individual bond, because that's not efficient, what we're going to do is we're going to make a magic number and we're going to say this is the max amount of debt that the U.S. government can issue. And then Congress can come back every couple years and raise that once the Treasury is getting close to it. No other countries really have the debt ceiling in the way the U.S. has a debt ceiling. Sweden kind of has one, but it's not nearly as strict, and it's not used as this political bargaining chip in the way that ours is in the U.S. So essentially, the reason I keep saying this is money we've already spent, this is about paying bills for things that Congress has already voted on. Congress has already voted on Social Security. They've already voted on SNAP benefits and, military spending and the tanks and the guns and the schools and all of the Inflation Reduction Act. All of that legislative work has already been done on the appropriations. They are, by refusing to raise the debt ceiling, they are saying that they do not think it is important that we meet those obligations they've already signed off on. So that's why I keep saying these are debts we already owe. We've already agreed to spend this money. These bills are coming due. Just because you don't like the house you live in anymore, you already signed that mortgage. So you don't get to be because unfortunately it's hard to foreclose on an entire country that is the world reserve currency, right? We don't have the same mechanisms. It has such huge reaching effects. Okay. The US is the largest sovereign debt market. Our debt exists everywhere. There are $25 trillion of bonds that are out in public hands. It accounts for 1/3 of the total global sovereign debt market. So if we become the first sovereign debt default in modern history, then that is going to have seismic effects on both the US economy and the global financial markets. So yes, that's why I'm freaking out about this. Another ignorant Canadian question. Does this mean we'll have dollar parity, and should I hold off on buying anything from the States until it's cheaper? Shit, I don't know if you should expect like the US Postal Service to be running or anything if we truly default on this debt. Technically they're self-funded, so maybe it'll be okay. I don't think that kind of arbitrage is going to be particularly successful. There are even some thoughts that the US dollar might go up if the US Treasury debt defaults, because investors might move from Treasury securities to dollars. Yeah. If a number was already agreed upon, are they raising that number? Yeah, they're raising the max amount that the Treasury is allowed to borrow. So the Treasury has to decide how much to borrow based on how much Congress has agreed to spend and how much tax revenue is brought in. And then that difference is like, you know, they borrow against, it's like a line of credit. So essentially Congress has said, you can borrow up to this amount. Let me know if you hit the top of it and come back and I'll vote on raising that credit limit. So the Treasury has hit that credit limit back in January. And so what they're doing right now is going, fuck, well, we can't issue any more bonds. So instead, they're like borrowing money from random pots of money. You know, in my own budget, I would be calling it whack-a-mole and YNAB, where I'm like moving things between categories. So, you know, it's not like they voted on this debt. They voted on like a total amount of debt that could be issued by the Treasury. And it's a Treasury's job to like go out and figure out how to balance, like how much debt they need to issue at any given time in order to pay our bills, which is why Yellen keeps being like, I think the date is this. I think the date is that. Have they ever lowered the debt ceiling? I mean, you couldn't really do that because the debt ceiling is like the total amount of debt that's been issued. We have had balanced budgets where they haven't had to go issue any bonds. So under Bill Clinton, there was a balanced budget. They were not running a deficit. You know, you can run or not run a deficit in any given year. A lot of that has to do with economic conditions, right? So like if the economy is running really hot, then you're going to have a lot more tax revenue, right? Because people are out there making money. So you're going to have more tax revenue. And if you have more tax revenue, then you're going to have to borrow less in order to make up the difference between the tax revenue and the spending, as long as you don't go too spendy crazy. If the ceiling or number is constantly raised, wouldn't it be a point reached where they could literally not be paid back? I mean, theoretically, yes. We're not really in, I mean, also kind of no, because it's fictional money. Like, they print the money. So, like, you can pay back money, but it's about, like, is the value of $1 going to be worth it? Right? Like, that's what happens in countries. So, actually, back to the Weimar Republic. So, we got the Weimar Republic. This is interwar period in Germany. Germany's like, fuck, I owe a lot of money. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to print a lot of money to pay everybody back. So they just go out, they print a bunch of money, but it leads to hyperinflation. So, yes, theoretically, there becomes a point at which people don't believe in your ability to pay it back, and then it lowers, it can devalue your currency, and also printing money devalues your currency, and that could be the case in which we default. Does that make sense? Like, it's all made up, and I hate to come back to that. As an economist, we really like people to believe that we're not making things up as we go along, but it is kind of fictional. By printing more money, would the money not be worth less? Yeah, that's inflation, right? So like the more money you print, the money is worth less. So yes, correct. It's like you buying a house, maxing out all your credit cards, and buying vehicles you don't need. I mean, yeah, how you feel about U.S. government spending. I think a lot of people feel like U.S. government spending is very high. I mean, this is where you get the tax and spend liberals, which is like, we should just tax corporations more and spend liberals. And then there's like the cut taxes and cut programs, small government conservatives, mostly Republicans, not all, that are like, hey, the government should just like not be involved in any of this. We shouldn't have Social Security. We shouldn't have Medicare. We shouldn't have Medicaid. Everything should be privatized. But then we could cut taxes and the private sector will work it out. And the government shouldn't be involved in all this. So those are like kind of the two basic philosophies. And those exist in most countries, right? Like, it's just that the scale at which the U.S. does not view spending on social programs relative to other rich economies is a very different thing. Because, like, the U.S. spends so much less per capita on social programs, government programs, because we're so very anti-socialist, compared to a lot of other rich countries, right? Because most other rich countries have like a better social support system as far as, support for low-income people, schooling, higher education that's like more funded by the government, and the big one, healthcare. So the big mess up was removing the U.S. from the gold standard. Dollars backed by gold, literally. I am not going to get into gold standard, but I'm just going to say I do not agree with that. And that is a whole separate live stream if we want to talk about Bretton Woods and talk about the gold standard. I actually think it would be fun. It might bring out some of the crazies. And I don't know how much we want like the trolls, but it's an interesting discussion. It was featured very heavily in my economics education. It's a big deal when it comes to macroeconomics, and I think it would be worth having that discussion. But I do not necessarily agree that the big mistake was removing us from the gold standard, because once again, gold is also arbitrary. The price of gold fluctuates and is relative to currencies. So there isn't necessarily that much more inherent value. You could also make the argument that really we have an oil-backed currency at this point. Oil, which is a commodity similar to gold, but one that is actually used in the world. Why do we not want a commodity like oil to be what we back our currency on? Oh, I don't know, because most of the oil is produced by countries whose governments we really don't like, with a lot of human rights abuses. So, they printed a lot of money and got a crazy leader. Now that is scary. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know which leader you're referring to, but, we might be talking about the Weimar Republic. Yes. Yeah. It does seem like oil is a fiat currency of sorts. Yeah, I mean, it was a commodity, right? Which is, it's not a fiat currency, because that would be, backed by a sovereign state. But sometimes it feels that way, given the current wars going on. I would like to earnestly hear the reasons on why a donuts back standard would not work. I think if I did this, I would need to prepare some very entertaining PowerPoint slides in advance, and I would be very willing to do that. So maybe we should talk about like why the gold standard is not as good as people thought it was, and why the donut standard would also not work. I don't know, I could do that. Oil and war-based economy. I mean, you summed it up. Not to get too political, but I mean, it's kind of undeniable. All right, I do worry that I veered possibly like too far into getting away from my supposed journalistic objectivity here. I would absolutely love to talk about the gold standard at some point, and like why it's generally agreed upon by anyone that's mainstream in economics whatsoever that the gold standard was no better or worse than our current standard that we have. But it's too much to tackle here. Here's what I'm going to say. This is not a call to action, but if you are stressed and you are looking for something to do, it is worth emailing, calling, texting, however you communicate with your representatives. If you have a representative in Congress, if you're a U.S. citizen, and just let them know that you would not like the negative economic impacts of defaulting on the student loan debt. Or the student loan debt. Defaulting on U.S. Treasury debt. I like how student loan debt was like more top of mind for me. And that you would like to talk to them about what is going on. Yeah, okay. I've caught up with Gerald. We were talking about the Weimar Republic. Yeah, that was the crazy leader. Know your justice. I'm ready for the gold topic. Go talk to your Congress critters. If you're stressed and freaked out and looking somewhere to channel your energy, that's the place to do it. Because frankly, you as an individual person cannot do shit about the looming budget debt crisis. You can't really make predictions about what the US dollar is going to do. You can't really do too much as far as your personal life. If you are someone who's a federal government employee and you're a little worried about your paycheck, maybe you could be saving more, maybe not be doing some splurges while you worry about your paycheck next month. But like, the thing that you can do is talk to your representatives in Congress and tell them they got to get this worked out because, I'm all for improving this system. I'm all for figuring out a better system, but now is not the time to be saying we have to figure out the entire system. Now is the time to be saying, figure it out, y'all. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I know that I cannot have effect on the path and outcome isn't happening, but you can always talk to your congressperson. As someone who used to work in a congressional office, I will say that they really do. They log all of the phone calls and texts and emails that they get. Phone calls are considered, phone calls and letters are considered the most impactful, but I'm sure you can find some sort of form letter if you're scared and shoot it off as an email and it will still matter. So just let them know that you have feelings as a constituent. All right. Well, thank you all for joining me this Tuesday evening. A thing I want to say, we have been talking the past couple weeks about how there has been technical issues for the text crew, which is the notification system that we were using because YouTube notifications are 100% not reliable. That being said, what we have discovered is that a bunch of carriers are now refusing the text messages for the text crew, and they won't tell you that they're refusing that. We went in and looked in the logs, and a bunch of carriers, including my own carrier, is refusing the text messages from this. I am searching for a better notification system. I will say, if you are a member of the Personal Finance Society, which is our Patreon, ohmydollar.com/support. If you're a member of the Personal Finance Society, I always send out reminders on there. And you also are invited to our Discord, which does automatic notifications when I've gone live. It's not a perfect system. I'm open to suggestions. I do also tweet this out, but a lot of people have abandoned Twitter. And who knows how that's going to go. Kind of feel like they already hit their debt ceiling. So we're still working on solutions to that. But anyway, thank you for joining me on a Tuesday night. Thank you for spending some time with me, freaking out about the debt ceiling. I am interested in the donut to gold standard comparison, so I think this is a fun topic. I might do it next week. So I am I'm hopeful that I won't have to talk about the debt ceiling next week. June 1st is that X date. They're going to have it worked out by then, right? I hope. But it's really all I can think about in the world of economics. We also should probably talk about what's going on with student loans. Again, I feel like we're just on the same treadmill these days, but we've got these two big things hanging over the U.S. economy. Gerald says, my son is in the army, and if he doesn't get paid, say goodbye to the food in my fridge. Scary stuff. I don't want that for you. I don't want it for your son. I don't want it for anyone. Thanks for giving us the debt ceiling rundown. Thank you for being here for it. I know it's not the funnest topic. It also, like, it's one of those things that's, like, seems like it's easy to understand, and then you start to feel like you understand less and less of it as I go on. And some of that is down to my own skills as an educator, and then some of that is due to the fact that, like, this is, like, such a high and abstract level once you get to trillions of dollars that it's, like, really hard to conceive of. But I hope you all have a lovely week. Stay hydrated. Pet a cat if you have one available. And I will see you next Tuesday. Bye. I don't know where my end screen went.